Let's get into Niners Bucs. And to me, I asked Chris Forster yesterday about this Buccaneer defensive line. And, you can kind of tell when these guys are impressed as opposed to when they're just kind of going through the motions, right? Because you ask any coach about the team they're playing this week, and they're all going to make them sound great. Oh,
Yep.
you kidding me? This guy, I mean, the tackles are fierce. They play the run. The edges burn the edge. The defensive ends burn the edges, and we got our hands full with these guys. That's just like standard fare. But I could tell by the way that Forster was talking about this D-line that he has legitimate concerns and respect for, this front four: Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Shaq Barrett, Logan Hall. They're unique, right? Shaq's a burner off the edge. Logan Hall is almost like a five technique, playing the five technique in their 34 front. Vita Vea is a nose guard, but they lined him up 2 weeks ago against Tennessee off defensive end, and he got a sack. And then Kalijah Cansey is kind of like a poor man's Aaron Donald if you watch him at Pitt. He's just a monster, and he's got quickness and speed. So to me, this is the big question coming into this game. Can the Niner offensive line that has a banged up McKivitz, no Aaron Banks, a banged up Trent Williams, and kind of an inconsistent Spencer Burford, can they block this Tampa Bay front? What do you think?
I think this game comes at a really good time for San Francisco because they established their momentum back against Jacksonville with a really dominant all-around performance. In fact, I really like what they did against Jacksonville from a three phases standpoint, how they dominated that game over a quality opponent that was hot after facing adversity coming out of the bye, as compared to that Cowboys victory when they put up 40 points and were really impressive in that game as well. But this Tampa Bay team is very feisty, and they provide a lot of tests and challenges to the opponent. And I think they're going to pose a very difficult test for San Francisco at a time where, okay, they beat Jacksonville. They're looking to get back on track, but this is a quality opponent where if you beat them, they're 4-5. They're fighting for one of those wild card spots in the NFL playoffs. Then that's a quality win on the resume. And you look at Tampa Bay and you think about Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield's their quarterback. He's been very mediocre to bad throughout his career with some good moments in there as well. And then you look at their head coach in Todd Bowles, who I like. He went to Temple. He interviewed for the Temple job a few years ago. I went to Temple. So there's that type of relationship there, but I think he's more so of a defensive coordinator as compared to a head coach. And it's not like they do anything from a scheme perspective offensively where you're like, wow, that's really, really creative. It can take the league by storm. They're just a solid all-around football team that shouldn't have lost to the Texans a few weeks ago if it wasn't without those heroics from CJ Stroud, who's playing unbelievable football under D'Amico Ryans. But when you do a deep dive into the numbers for how Tampa Bay plays and the type of challenges that they present, they're 8th in points per game allowed at under 20, 19 to be exact. So I think that's a really good spot to be at in today's NFL that has become increasingly offensive happy. Opponents' points per play, they're 6th in the NFL. They have the #1 red zone defense. So when teams get inside the 20, they're only giving a touchdown up on 32% of those red zone trips. And then in opposing touchdowns per game, 1.9. And then lastly, to round this out before I go back to you, Larry, and that really is the backbone of this conversation, their strength is their defensive line. The 49ers' biggest weakness is their offensive line. And another reason why I think this game comes at a really good time is because as you get deeper into the season and you start to project ahead and you look at the potential opponents that you have in the playoffs, and then you have those 2 Seattle games in 3 weeks. I like Seattle's defense. I like their defensive line. A team like the Detroit Lions, Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, they all have really good defensive lines. And I think that this Niners offensive line, especially the right side of it with Colton McKivitz, with Spencer Burford, which has given up 75%, I think, of the Niners' pressures this year, that could be the thing that holds this team back. So this is a good test against Tampa Bay to see how they can block against a quality front that has all those players that you noted.
You know, Colton McKivitz has practiced the last couple of days, and I believe he's practicing again today. So then you've got probably McKivitz starting at right tackle. But I asked Forster, is it Jalen Moore? Is it Matt Pryor? He said Matt Pryor is the first man up if McKivitz can't go. But Jalen Moore played well sitting in for Trent Williams at left tackle. So they won't stay with Pryor if Pryor struggles. The interesting thing to me is how much better do you think the Niner line will be, Chase, if Banks comes back from the turf toe and they can slide Feliciano into either a share at right guard with Burford or just, replace Burford in the short term with Feliciano at right guard?
I do like that adjustment, and I think that that's going to take place once Aaron Banks is coming off of that turf toe. I think he'll be at left guard, and then John Feliciano, who actually had the highest Pro Football Focus grade for a guard on the Niners this year against Jacksonville, will then slide to right guard. And a lot of people have asked me, Chase, they're thinking about going with a right guard rotation of Spencer Burford and John Feliciano. That seems very interesting. That's odd. It's actually not. San Francisco has done this before. They actually did it with Daniel Brunskill, and it did work out to their favor, where Brunskill played some really good football. That's why he landed that deal with the Tennessee Titans in NFL free agency to team back up with Rand Carthon, who's now the general manager and was in this front office since 2017 with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. So I think Feliciano will help there at right guard. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a majority of the snaps there. I think Burford does have ability, but he's just failed to break through, and the pressures along that right side of the line of scrimmage have been very problematic. And if you're thinking late in the game, playoff matchup against an opponent with a really good defensive line, if you can't pass protect and Brock Purdy is running for his life, which he kind of had to do a couple of times against Jacksonville, that can halt your offensive momentum. That can stop drives. That can turn a field goal into you having to punt right around that midfield area. So I think Feliciano helps. The big question mark, what happens with Colton McKivitz? Because I think that he'll continue to struggle, because I just don't think he's a starting right tackle in this league. But at least you're able to kind of put duct tape on a hole in a boat and you go Feliciano there at right guard and hoping that at least helps you out a little bit.
One of the things that I'd heard this summer was that the Niners went after Feliciano partially because with the New York Giants, he had played well head-to-head against the Eagles. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's accurate. I never went back and looked at those films and saw exactly how he matched up. But I'll say this, Feliciano's kind of a old school brawler, really broad, really tough, smart guy. I loved him at Miami going way, way back with the Hurricanes, and he's been in the league for a long time. I will be interested to see, because they do like Burford. Do they try to keep Burford in there part-time, or do they just say, you know what, no, we're going to Feliciano and Burford's maybe the future at right guard? I think that will be something to watch. And then, of course, the big assumption here is that Aaron Banks comes back, but it's turf toe, and everybody knows turf toe is just kind of a random deal.